Hello, it's me, Harriet Tugsman, and I cannot wait to see you at drag camp.
Alright, you guys already know the heat and accusations that the LGBTQ community is facing right now, and you knowingly choose a drag queen by the name of Harriet Tugsman to be one of the camp counselors. Were Anita Touch a Kid and Ivana Molest a Child already booked? And then you all wonder why gay marriage is on the chopping block. And let's not get it confused, let's not get it twisted. This isn't a trans issue. Drag queens are gay men that dress up as women for entertainment.
Why? Because I will be your camp counselor of lip sync and the karaoke. So come on down. I'm so excited to teach you what I've learned from Beyonce. But hey, from one great to another. Can't wait to see you, my loves. Bye.
What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, you guys, so this was sent to me by one of my Instagram friends, which I'm not going to shout your name out because I don't know if you want to get dragged into this mess. No pun intended. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because I really do feel like we shouldn't be doing anything as a community that's going to put more of a target on us than we already have, especially with gay marriage possibly being on the chopping block and the way that people perceive us as LGBT in general kind of being in a little bit of jeopardy right now, which I feel like we can correct if more of the sane members of the community would step forward and we start maybe representing a little bit more. But when it comes to drag shows, that's something that usually happens at gay bars later in the evening. The jokes are bawdy, the makeup's ridiculous, and the ridiculousness and the over-the-topness of it all is what I consider more on the end of adult humor. So I don't really know why we're trying to put this on young people. And yeah, you could argue that there's Drag Race on TV and some of the children will watch that with their parents. But that's where, again, I feel like that's fine if that's what their parents want to do in their comfort of their own home and they feel like they can kind of put guardrails on it. But I can tell you a lot of drag queens aren't built to be around young people in the first place, just as far as the things that they're going to talk about or the things that they're going to say. It's usually more designed for adults, even as far as that goes, because you're working in bars all the time. Like, I'm like that even with my nephews and nieces, my great nephews and nieces, I should say, because my nephews and nieces are now in their 20s and 30s. And so with them, I can just be myself because they're adults. But my great nephews and nieces probably think that I'm a little bit standoffish with them or I don't talk to them as much as I could. And they're right. And it's just because I know that I have a little bit of a potty mouth. I don't worry about myself saying anything inappropriate as far as anything to do with adult activities, relations, let's say. That I don't worry about, but I do worry about the amount of times that I might possibly use the F word or just say something that isn't appropriate that way. But I feel the same way with drag queens. So that's what I'm saying is I know some people would be like, well, what about you? Well, even for myself, I know that I'm not appropriate for certain situations. I'm not an all ages type of person. I'm just not. So also when it comes to drag queens, I think there should be a bit of that as well, where they just kind of know, yeah, I'm not really built for that. My name is Harriet Tugsman. Do any parents want their child to come back to them and be like, what does Harriet Tugsman mean? Because the camp is for 13 to 18. There are people even on the 13 end that are naive enough that they wouldn't know what Harriet Tugsman stands for. And the other thing is, when you have that range there, I don't really know if 18 should even be involved because there's so much room for people to get into trouble. Like when I was younger, I went to a gay youth group. There was just a weekly meeting, and I believe the age range was like 13 to 27. And a 13-year-old and a 27-year-old have no business hanging out. I don't know if they've corrected that since then. And I feel similar to 13 and 18, even though that's not as wide of a gap. I just feel like it leaves it open for certain things to maybe go awry. And if something like that were to happen, aside from any trauma that the 13 might suffer, there's also going to be huge backlash, and it's going to hurt any other LGBT youth events that people might want to put on or feel are necessary in the future. So that's another reason that I don't really get down with it. And I don't really know, because I looked up a little bit to see what people were saying about it online. It appears that it hasn't fully caught on online, but when I looked at TikTok and searched gay drag camp, there have been other, which I knew that too, that there have been other youth camps that were drag oriented. But why do we always have to have the most obnoxious queens speak out when it comes to these kinds of things? I'm going to give you a quick example, because I just don't understand why it's always the most annoying of us. Don't start. But why it's always the most annoying of us that are always the loudest and always want to be out front. Sometimes it's okay to just shut your annoying mouth. I know that they would love to say things like, well, it's because when I was younger, I was a queer. Zip it, Mary. Nobody needs to hear your mouth all the time and on everything. Your horrible representation. But anyway, let's get into this and see what's what in the butt. See, I told you I'm just not appropriate. Let's get into it though. By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. Help a bitch out.
Imagine sending your kid to LGBTQ drag summer camp where they're groomed into becoming youth drag queens by a staff who are drag queens. I don't know, but maybe if they chose to go to a summer camp with drag queens as the whole theme, they like drag queens.
Imagine being this annoying and thinking that you were actually good representation for a community that's already under fire. And to your point, when I was very young, I already knew I liked gay men. Does that mean that the 20 and 30-year-olds that I was hanging out with at the time weren't? You know what I'm getting at here. So what I'm getting at is that statement gives real they were asking for it vibes as far as I'm concerned. Let me know if I'm reaching. Put it in the comments. Hey, quiet.
I don't think it's grooming when the person intentionally sends them to a camp that they wanted to go to. You are aware that summer camp is not mandatory for all children.
Now there, I think this person makes a good point in that summer camp is not mandatory, but I cannot stress enough that right now with people having particular opinions and feelings about what's going on in the LGBTQ community, especially where children are concerned, I think that it's important that we not put an even bigger target on the community than is already there. And I'm also going to say, just to be very clear, that target is there deservedly so, because there has been a lot of bullshit coming out of the LGBT community lately. So I'm not going to pretend to be one of the gay men that's like, why is everybody up in arms? Oh, we all know why people are up in arms. And it's because the LGBTQ, stress on the TQ part, has really made us look bad as of late. So that's why I think that queens like you should just shut your mouths and maybe stay out of it. Because you're the ones that always speak up for all of us. And I know a lot of us feel like, what's this queen talking about?
Also, Bible camp? If we're going to be mad about drag camp, which is literally a camp devoted to performance art just in the style of drag, then we can't just forget about the fact that Bible camp exists.
But what I think that you're trying to say is that Bible camp could possibly be an indoctrination to a religious cult, just like drag camp could be an indoctrination to the LGBTQ plus cult. Did I get it?
How is that not grooming? It's literal grooming. What about hairstyling camp? It's literal grooming.
Okay, I see what you tried to do there, but is there really such a thing as hairstyling camp? I know you were working really hard for the grooming pun, but I don't know if you actually made your point if there's no such thing as hairstyling camp. And also, I cannot stress enough, you are super obnoxious and you should keep your mouth shut when it comes to anything LGBT. You will not help the case, and I know queens like you usually don't have friends in real life. It's what it is. Sorry, Toots. All right, so I also saw this guy that runs a different drag camp, and this person comes off as a little more relatable, but at the same time, in the things that they're saying, that's what I have a problem with. And I want to make my case on this because for me, it's not so much about the idea of drag camp. It's basically what it's reinforcing and what it is we're trying to normalize. And I don't really know that these things need to be normalized, especially in people for whom their frontal lobe has not fully developed. That's the problem I have with a lot of this. And I'm glad we had this chat today because I was trying to figure out where I was at with it and why it bothers me so much. And I think that that's the reason, because you're basically asking children, which yes, 13 is young teen, but your first year of your teens. But at the same time, I don't feel like we should be asking these young people to make commitments to anything. So let's get into it and see what he's saying, and I'll make my point a little more as we go.
I teach drag at an LGBT summer camp. As laws are introduced across the country that restrict drag, and as lots of opinions are being shared about the effect that it has on children, I thought I'd show you the actual impact that drag has on young people. At Camp Brave Trails, queer youth are encouraged to be themselves and to find their people.
Okay, so I have a problem with the term queer youth because queer is an ideology. And to tell you the truth, I would even have a problem if they were referring to them as gay or lesbian or bisexual youth. And the reason that I have a problem with this terminology, especially for the younger end of the spectrum, because you can say once you get later in your teens, then you might have a better idea of exactly where you're at. But I, especially when it comes to a lot of young women that I've known, that I've been related to or been friends with as I was growing up, I've known a lot of young women that identified as bisexual, and I never questioned it because that's their business, and I really didn't care that much because it didn't affect my life, and I was just like, okay. But in some cases, they were younger than you should be to even be thinking that way as far as what you're into in a sexual way. So I was kind of apprehensive, but I just was kind of like, they say they're bi, then they're bi. And when they grew up, they not only didn't identify as bisexual, but they pretty much just completely scrapped that part of their life altogether. Like where I don't ever bring it up because they never bring it up, but it's not a thing at all anymore for them where they even say they feel that way or acknowledge that they felt that way in the past. And I think that's why we shouldn't force people to identify as anything. I think when it comes to children, and I think this is just going to become more and more natural, or when it comes to youth in general, as we progress as a society and as people become more comfortable with who they are and these things become less and less of an issue where anybody even thinks about it, I think what we'll end up finding is that some people may feel one particular way when they're younger, and this is even when it comes to orientation, but then when they get older, they might feel a different way. So why commit to anything, especially an ideology that kind of has politics involved with it, and especially miserable politics? Because if you know anything about the queer community, that's a lot of like victim mentality and trying to force people into believing that you are this particular thing. And I don't think that young people should be in that position at all to where they have to identify as queer or anything else. I think we should just let young people grow the way that they grow when it comes to orientation or even identity or anything else, and just kind of let them be the blobs of youth that they are, if that makes sense. You know, like unformed, figuring it out, trying to get it together. Like, yeah, if, you know, they want to go to their families and get advice on particular things or talk to their parents about particular things, I think that's fine. You know, that's what a parent's for. But when it comes to these declarations to the world, I don't really think that's the most necessary, and I don't think it's the most healthy, and I think it could lead young people to feel trapped in a particular identity, or like they've committed to this particular thing. And if they don't turn out to be that, or that turns out not to be the way that they feel in the end, then all of a sudden that same queer community will turn on them, because that's what the queer community does. It legitimately just turns on people. And I don't think that that's something that we should subject our youth to.
Their place and their passion. One of the many activities campers can choose from is drag, where we study the history of drag, learn about the intersection of drag and activism.
Okay, so that's where you would teach them about Martha P. Johnson, right? Because one of the things that bothers me the most about LGBT history is that they never teach the actual truth, which Marsha P. Johnson, who's credited with starting the Stonewall riots, which that's not true. Marsha P. Johnson wasn't even there when Stonewall happened. Marsha P. Johnson, by their own admission, got there after 2 a.m. and, as she puts it, after everything was on fire. But Marsha P. Johnson, which the community will always tell you was trans, was not trans. Marsha P. Johnson basically did drag, was a crossdresser, was a sissy, as Marsha P. Johnson herself says it. And for those of you who are wondering why I say her and she, it's because it's the most natural for me when I'm dealing with drag queens. Because when they're in that persona, which obviously Marsha P. Johnson, when she's being Marsha, is in Marsha drag, it's just natural for me to refer to them that way. So for the people that are going to get like, well, why are you saying she? Mind your business, okay? In case you haven't noticed, you're dealing with an advanced gay that happens to be on your side and has a decent platform. So how about you chill out a little bit and understand when somebody's trying to help you instead of trying to turn everybody into an enemy. This is why people don't like you in real life. Just like that queen I showed a little while ago that was meh, meh, meh. That's you, except for you're a straight version of it. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. Don't be that they. I'm sorry, don't be that they and them. But yeah, my point is, if they're going to teach the actual history, if that's what they're claiming to do, the drag and activism, that's where you slip in Marsha P. Johnson. And even at that particular time, that's where you slip in Sylvia Rivera, which is the other one. Instead of continuing this lie that I do have a problem with, because if we're going to teach our history, I think historical accuracy is an important part of teaching history.
And of course, play with makeup, costumes, and performance.
Okay, if these children really want to play with makeup, they can wait for their sister to leave their caboodle in the bathroom like the rest of us did. I don't even know if people still make caboodles or if caboodle's still a brand, but when I was younger, both of my sisters had caboodles, and in the caboodle, because it was like a makeup toolbox for lack of a better term, and it had all these compartments, and my sisters did have a fair amount of makeup once they got to those ages, you know, when they were allowed to wear makeup, because I come from a family that was kind of strict, and so my mom didn't allow my sisters to wear makeup when they were super young, but when they got to those makeup ages, I remember a few times I got stuck in that bathroom with their caboodles, and it wasn't exactly drag summer camp, but there was definitely a little bit of painting and artistry going. I may or may not have put a towel on my head for my long hair, but nobody pushed me to do anything, so I turned out to be me. Let's go on. That's enough. Enough of the personal anecdotes.
We encourage campers to participate only as much as they feel comfortable. This allows them to explore their identity and different forms of self-expression in an affirming and loving environment.
See, it's like I said, when they're children, I don't think there's anything to affirm. I don't think you have to affirm anything because, in my opinion, in order to affirm something, it really has to be actual decision that you've made. And so if there's no declaration, then there's really nothing to affirm. Like I said, I think that's my main problem with all of this, is there's this idea that young people have to commit to these things and can't just be silly young people. Like I said, when I was younger, and that was very common when I was younger, I know people do that to this day, but when I was younger, it wasn't uncommon to put a towel on your head and pretend it was your long hair and maybe lip sync a couple of Madonna songs. But I didn't need anybody to affirm that. I didn't need anybody to be like, well, you're a drag queen now, clearly, or this is because you're going to be gay, or none of that stuff. It was just being fun, being silly, being a kid. And I think that that's where, because Montessori has been a thing, which, Montessori pushes this, there aren't girl toys and there aren't boy toys, which I definitely do agree with. Like, I'm not saying that like this weird hippy dippy type of thing. I think because when I was younger, I played with my sister's Barbies, and I know that I liked playing with my sister's Barbies, and I did jump rope, and I did a lot of things that were not of my gender. But then I also had boy toys too. Like I had He-Man, and I used to play with WWE, well, at the time WWF wrestlers and, stuff like that. And I was very much into that too. And so I liked having both boys and girls toys to play with. And I think in a weird way, it left me a more balanced person. But I don't think that there needs to be any kind of commitment or ideology that goes along with that. That's where I feel like you can just let young people figure that out for themselves. And I guess if they need a place to connect, a camp is cool, but I just don't see why it has to be a drag camp. I don't see why it has to be something that is still gonna indoctrinate. And I hate to use that term, but that's basically exactly what the problem is that is indoctrination. The process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. Which, yeah, I think that does fit what's happening in these particular instances, because these young people aren't old enough to think critically in that way. So it does become a full-on indoctrination. And so is that really something that we're trying to push as a community? Because I thought that was the opposite of what we were saying when I was younger. And this all does go back to why it is people are tired of LGBT in general and gay men are getting dragged into the fray. It's not just being dragged into the fray, it's because gay men like these drag queens are really turning out to be the slippery slope. And some of you might be like, well, why do you even care? And it's because I'm included in that group. So people will assume that I have this particular set of beliefs too because I'm a gay man, and they'll think those gay men think that way, so that must be the way you think too. It's bad enough I have people do it on this channel just because I say absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world, but that's just because it's catchy and it gets on their nerves because I'm so the opposite of what that acronym means. I'm just a gay man, as regular as I can be, gay man. And so it really is just to get on their nerves. But there will be people that assume because I say that I am now a part of that thinking. And even if I just said I was gay, a certain amount of people would assume that I'm down with all the madness, and I'm not. So that's why I feel like you guys really are dragging all of us into a lot of shit that we don't want to be a part of. Some of us just wanted to be ourselves as far as being able to be openly gay and having the same rights as everybody else and not be a constant political statement.
And let me tell you, we have so much fun along the way. Drag is a powerful art form that can be used to educate, empower people to be themselves, uplift important causes, and spread joy. Implying otherwise is simply not true.
Okay, even that's debatable, especially debatable if you've ever been to a gay bar, because a lot of times they'll put the drag show right smack dab in the middle of dancing time, and you'll have been having a good time, worked up a sweat, maybe you have your shirt off, maybe you were chatting with somebody, you're a couple drinks in by now, feeling a little woozy, blame it on the goose, got you feeling loose, just playing, but kind of for real. But you would find yourself sometimes like right in the middle of your good time, and then all of a sudden they start up a drag show and you're like, this is what we're doing, especially at the Latino bars. When they have drag shows at the Latino bars, boy, will that be a boner killer for your night, because a lot of times the Latina drag queens or Latino drag queens will do ballads, and it's just like, this is really killing my night. You know, the ballads where they're like crying as they're performing and lip syncing. I've seen so many drag shows at this point. And, you know, with my friends being trans, there are a fair amount of trans women that do the drag shows for various reasons. Sometimes because that's how they started, sometimes just as a artistic outlet. sometimes. So like that's another thing that people have to understand me. I'm not against drag in general. I just think drag is for adults. I think drag is for grown-up time. And I think that that is very clear in even like the name Harriet Tubman or a lot of the names that people go by when it comes to drag. It really does let you know that this is an adult art form. This isn't something that's really designed for children. And I don't know any way to Disney-fy it enough that it would be. But you guys can let me know what you think about it. That's just where I'm at on it. If you want to see a video of me talking about gay marriage being on the chopping block, click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.